Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying Volume 4, which is titled Exploring the Path to Enlightenment. We're going to be studying chapters 11 through 20 today, and the way that we do this program is I invite students in Zoom to volunteer to read. After someone reads a chapter, then I will share a little bit of teachings on that, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Then I will open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to each chapter. We'll progress through chapter by chapter this way. So if there's someone who would like to volunteer to read, you're more than welcome to electronically raise your hand. And then as we get to the question period, you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like through unmuting your microphone. So I'm just going to switch over to ensure everybody can see what we're studying today. And it looks like Vibhav has his hand up first, so we'll go with you. And then it looks like, Pat, you're the next one after that.
Thank you. Cultivating mindfulness of breathing fulfills 4 foundations of mindfulness, 7 factors of enlightenment, true wisdom and liberation. There is, monks, one thing which, when developed and cultivated, fulfills 4 things. And 4 things which, when developed and cultivated, fulfill 7 things. And 7 things which, when developed and cultivated, fulfill 2 things. Concentration by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, monks, is the one thing which, when developed and cultivated, fulfills the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The 4 foundations of mindfulness, when developed and cultivated, fulfill the 7 factors of enlightenment. The 7 factors of enlightenment, when developed and cultivated, fulfill true wisdom and liberation. Mindfulness of breathing fulfills the 4 foundations of mindfulness. How, monks, is concentration by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, developed and cultivated so that it fulfills the 4 foundations of mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk, having gone to the forest, the foot of a tree, or to an empty hut, sits down, having folded his legs crosswise, straightened his body, and set a mindfulness in front of him. Just mindful he breathes in, mindful he breathes out. Breathing in long, he knows, I breathe in long, or breathing out long, he knows, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he knows, I breathe in short, or breathing out short, he knows, I breathe out short. He trains thus, experiencing the whole body, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experiencing the whole body, I will breathe out. He trains thus, calming the bodily sensations, I will breathe in. He trains thus, calming the bodily sensations, I will breathe out. He trains thus, experiencing joy, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experiencing joy, I will breathe out. He trains thus, experiencing my peacefulness, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experiencing peacefulness, I will breathe out. He trains thus, experiencing the mental activity, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experiencing the mental activity, I will breathe out. He trains thus, calming the mental activity, I will breathe in. He trains thus, calming the mental activity, I will breathe out. He trains thus, experiencing the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus, experiencing the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus, gladdening the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus, gladdening the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus, concentrating the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus, concentrating the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus, liberating the mind, I will breathe in. He trains thus, liberating the mind, I will breathe out. He trains thus, reflecting on impermanence, I will breathe in. He trains thus, reflecting on impermanence, I will breathe out. He trains thus, reflecting on fading away, I will breathe in. He trains thus, reflecting on fading away, I will breathe out. He trains thus, reflecting on elimination, I will breathe in. He trains thus, reflecting on elimination, I will breathe out. He trains thus, reflecting on letting go, I will breathe in. He trains thus, reflecting on letting go, I will breathe out. Whenever, monks, a monk, when breathing in long knows, I will breathe in long, or when breathing out long knows, I breathe out long. Or when breathing in short, he knows, I breathe in short, or when breathing out short knows, I breathe out short. When he trains thus, experiencing the whole body, I will breathe in. When he trains thus, experiencing the whole body, I will breathe out. When he trains thus, calming the bodily sensations, I will breathe in. When he trains thus, calming the bodily sensations, I will breathe out. On that occasion, the monk resides reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed craving and displeasure in regard to the world. For what reason? I call this a certain kind of body, monks, that is breathing in and breathing out. Therefore, monks, on that occasion, the monk recites reflecting on the body as body, dedicated, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed craving and displeasure in regard to the world. Whenever a monk trains us, experiencing joy, I will breathe in. When he trains this, experiencing joy, I will breathe out. When he trains this, experiencing peacefulness, I will breathe in. When he trains this, experiencing peacefulness, I will breathe out. When he trains this, experiencing the mental activity, I will breathe in. When he trains this, experiencing the mental activity, I will breathe out. When he trains this, experiencing the mental activity, I will breathe in. For calming the mental activity, I will breathe in. When he trains this, calming the mental activity, I will breathe out. On that occasion, the monk recites reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed craving and displeasure in regard to the world. For what reason? I call this a certain kind of feeling, monks. That is close attention to breathing and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Therefore, monks, on that occasion, the monk recites reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed craving and displeasure in regard to the world. Whenever a monk trains thus, experiencing the mind, I will breathe in. When he trains this, experiencing the mind, I will breathe out. When he trains this, gladdening the mind, I will breathe in. When he trains this, gladdening the mind, I will breathe out. When he trains this, concentrating the mind, I will breathe in. When he trains this, concentrating the mind, I will breathe out. When he trains this, liberating the mind, I will breathe in. When he trains this, liberating the mind, I will breathe out. On that occasion, the monk recites reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed craving and displeasure in regard to the world. For what reason? I say, monks, that there is no development of concentration by mindfulness of breathing from mindfulness meditation, for one who is muddled and who lacks clear comprehension. Therefore, monks, on that occasion, the monk recites reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed craving and displeasure in regard to the world. Whenever a monk trains thus, reflecting on impermanence, I will breathe in. When he trains thus, reflecting on impermanence, I will breathe out. When he trains thus, reflecting on fading away, I will breathe in. When he trains thus, reflecting on fading away, I will breathe out. When he trains thus, reflecting on elimination, I will breathe in. When he trains thus, reflecting on elimination, I will breathe out. When he trains thus, reflecting on letting go, I will breathe in. When he trains thus, reflecting on letting go, I will breathe out. On that occasion, the monk recites reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed craving and displeasure in regard to the world. Having seen this wisdom, what is the abandoning of craving and displeasure? The monk is one who looks on closely with equanimity. Therefore, monks, on that occasion, the monk recites reflecting on mental objects and mental objects, dedicated, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed craving and displeasure in regard to the world. It is, monks, when concentration by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, is developed and cultivated in this way that it fulfills the four foundations of mindfulness.
Can I pause you there, Vibhav?
Sure.
Okay. So here the Buddha is going to teach you how one thing leads to the other. He's actually an expert at this, showing the cause and effect or the action and result, how one thing leads to another. But here he's showing you how breathing mindfulness meditation and practicing that leads to the development of the four foundations of mindfulness. And that leads to the development of the 7 factors of enlightenment. And that leads to true wisdom and liberation, which is enlightenment. He's showing you this cause and effect. So he sets that up for you here in the first 2 paragraphs, explaining that's what he's going to teach you. And now at the beginning, he teaches the meditation. And you guys have seen this before if you've been studying this program, where he basically lays out the steps that he teaches in terms of meditation. And the way that I suggest that you look at all of these steps is you look at it like when you were first learning to brush your teeth, that your parents had to teach you, put the toothpaste on the brush, put the brush under the water, put it into your mouth, stroke it back and forth on one side of the teeth, and so forth and so on. And you had to pay a lot of attention to that when you were first getting started. But now you just do it and you can easily brush your teeth. So the guidance that I give during meditations, that is just consolidating all of this and giving you an opportunity to really start practicing and go through all of these things without having to think about each individual step, because the Buddha is not teaching you to think about each individual thing. He's just explaining to you what to do while you're in meditation, and then you just do it. And that's what I'm teaching you, is how to just do meditation and actually start reaping the benefits. So this first part, he just explains this is how to do breathing mindfulness meditation. But then he's showing you at each stage of the meditation how it leads to cultivating a particular aspect of the four foundations of mindfulness. So this first part of the meditation, where the mind is breathing in and breathing out, essentially just focusing the mind on the breath, knowing whether it's long or short, it's basically just bringing the mind to the breath, the way that I teach. And then as you're training your mind focusing on the breath, if you notice any kind of bodily sensations in the body, then what you are to do is to cut that off, let it go, and bring the mind back to the breath. That's what he's teaching you. Like if you experience the whole body, you're experiencing the body, and you're noticing bodily sensations, calm those down by just focusing on the breath. That's why he keeps repeating over and over again. Experiencing the whole body, I will breathe in. Experiencing the whole body, I will breathe out. Meaning no matter what's happening, just keep breathing in and out and focus the mind on the breath. And in this case, you're developing the foundation of mindfulness of being aware of the bodily sensations. Because if you remember those four foundations of mindfulness, it's the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. That bodily sensations aspect is being aware of those bodily sensations associated with discontentedness that is about to arise. That when you take in contact through the six sense bases, if there's a craving, desire, attachment in the mind, it's going to trigger some bodily sensations associated with conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant. And what you would like to do with your awareness of mind, your mindfulness of that bodily sensation, it's that early warning system alerting you, hey, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. And you say, nope, I'm not going to let you do that. And you cut that off. That's ideal. Because if you don't do that, it then becomes a feeling. You can cut it off there, but that's not ideal. You'd like to back that up as soon as you can and close as you can to the bodily sensations. But if you miss it and it does become a feeling, you cut it off there. Because if not, it's going to form a conditioned feeling, or it has formed a conditioned feeling, and now it's going to start affecting the condition of the mind. This is where you've been grumpy or irritated or annoyed for multiple hours or days or something like this. And then it feeds the mental object. So the Buddha is walking you through how he's showing you here how these steps are helping you to develop that first foundation of mindfulness. Then these next steps are helping you to develop the next foundation, where you're developing the awareness of the feelings. So he's talking here about how that's occurring. And he's saying these are the steps that's helping you to develop, to be aware of any feelings that arise in the mind. Because ideally, you'd cut it off as a bodily sensation, but between now and enlightenment, you're going to experience some conditioned feelings. And you would like to catch it sooner and sooner so that you basically transform the mind. As long as you keep allowing the mind to form that feeling, it's going to keep being wired that way. So you're going to need to cut it off as a bodily sensation. And if it does become a feeling, try to cut that off as soon as possible too, because the longer that you allow the mind to stay wired that way, to have that particular conditioned feeling, it's going to keep doing that. So here the Buddha is explaining what steps of the meditation are helping you to develop the awareness of the feelings. Then he's explaining the steps that are helping you to develop awareness of the mind, or the condition of the mind. Here he's showing you the steps, and then here he's explaining, okay, that's helping you to develop the awareness of the condition of the mind. And then these last few things here, he's explaining to you how this is helping you to now develop the awareness of the mental objects. And remember, the mental objects are these deeply rooted containers in the mind, like the 10 fetters. Those are all mental objects. And if you put a blockade at the bodily sensations and you're cutting off any discontentedness that is arising at that point, then what you're doing is you're using all the tools and techniques to uproot these mental objects out of the mind and purify the mind. So if you can basically stop any kind of anger that's coming into the mind as a bodily sensation, you still have that mental object of ill will. And that's where you're using the loving kindness meditation, like a jackhammer, to break that up and purify it and get it out of the mind. And not only are you using loving kindness meditation, but you're going out into the world and practicing being loving and kind in your day-to-day life. And that's where the real transformation is happening. So the more that you get aware of these four foundations of mindfulness, the more you can take action to be able to address whatever is arising in the mind. The way that I have described mindfulness in the past is like this virus scanner that's kind of watching over the mind. Like your virus scanner is watching over your hard drive, and whenever a virus comes in, it's going to quarantine it. It's going to take action to be able to clear it out and get it off your hard drive. So it's always running, your virus scanner. And it's the same thing with your mindfulness, that your mindfulness is just always there, looking over the mind. And if at any point it notices any arising of discontentedness as a bodily sensation, as a feeling, if you're noticing the condition of the mind or you're noticing the symptoms of a mental object, that's where you need to apply right effort to step in and cut that off and let it go. And that's essentially what he's helping you to be able to see here, is that this is helping you to be able to cultivate the wisdom of abandoning craving and displeasure and train the mind to be calm and equanimous rather than bouncing around, going into these pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep on going through this. But if you guys have questions, it seems like you might have questions. All right, let me go ahead and open up to questions. Vibhav, I saw your hand go on and off. Does that mean you have a question?
No, I just want to read.
Okay. I think, Pat, your hand is up to read, and it looks like, Marcy, you have a question. So go ahead, Marcy.
Thank you, Teacher David. Teacher David, I have noticed that lately I am noticing bodily sensations almost on up. Seems like a rapid cycle. Was there a period of time where you went through where you just noticed bodily sensations constantly?
Yes. When your mind first becomes aware of them, you're going to notice them quite a bit because you haven't really been taking action towards them, where the mind has been slipping past the bodily sensations and you've been getting a lot of feelings. Now, maybe you're not getting as many of the feelings, but you're catching it more and more as a bodily sensation. And you're going to notice it more frequently there. But if you keep restraining your mind, then eventually those bodily sensations will calm down over time too, because you're getting rid of more and more of your cravings. That's what's arising, those bodily sensations, is the craving in the mind. Because once you get rid of your cravings, eventually you'll get to the point where no matter what contact you have, you're not going to experience any arising of anything because there's no cravings in there to be able to see it as agreeable or disagreeable. It's just contact.
Okay. Thank you, teacher.
You're welcome. Okay, so let me just check YouTube and Zoom and Facebook and see if we have anything there. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So, Vibhav, if you'd like to continue, this is a pretty long discourse.
Yeah. 4 foundations of mindfulness fulfill the 7 factors of enlightenment. And how amongst are the 4 foundations of mindfulness developed and cultivated so that they fulfill the 7 factors of enlightenment? Whenever monks, a monk resides reflecting on body as body, and on that occasion, unmuddled mindfulness is established in the monk. Whenever monks, unmuddled mindfulness has been established in the monk, on that occasion, the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is aroused by the monk. On that occasion, the monk develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of mindfulness goes to fulfillment by development in the monk. Reciting thus mindfully, he penetrates that teaching with wisdom, examines it, makes an investigation of it. Whenever a monk reciting thus mindfully penetrates a teaching with wisdom, examines it, makes an investigation of it. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of investigation is aroused by the monk. On that occasion, the monk develops the enlightenment factor of investigation. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of investigation goes to fulfillment by development in the monk. While he penetrates the teaching with wisdom, examines it, makes an investigation of it, his energy is aroused without slackening. Whenever a monk's energy is aroused without slackening as he penetrates the teaching with wisdom, examines it, makes an investigation of it. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of energy is aroused by the monk. On that occasion, the monk develops the enlightenment factor of energy. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of energy goes to fulfillment by development in the monk. When his energy is aroused, when there arises in him joy. Whenever joy arises in a monk whose vitality is aroused, on that occasion, the enlightenment factor of joy is aroused by the monk. On that occasion, the monk develops the enlightenment factor of joy. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of joy goes to fulfillment by development in the monk. For one whose mind is uplifted by joy, the body becomes tranquil, and the mind becomes tranquil. Whenever the body becomes tranquil, and the mind becomes tranquil in a monk whose mind is uplifted by joy. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of tranquility is aroused by the monk. On that occasion, the monk develops the enlightenment factor of tranquility. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of tranquility goes to fulfillment by development in the monk. For one whose body is tranquil and who is joyful, the mind becomes concentrated. Whenever monks, the mind becomes concentrated in a monk whose body is tranquil and who is joyful. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of concentration is aroused by the monk. On that occasion, the monk develops the enlightenment factor of concentration. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of concentration goes to fulfillment by development in the monk. He becomes one who closely looks on with equanimity as the mind is concentrated. Whenever a monk becomes one who closely looks on with equanimity as the mind is concentrated. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of equanimity is aroused by the monk. On that occasion, the monk develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of equanimity goes to fulfillment by development in the monk. Whenever a monk resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, mind is mind, mental objects as mental objects. On that occasion, unmuddled mindfulness is established in the monk. Whenever unmuddled mindfulness has been established in a monk, on that occasion, the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is aroused by the monk. On that occasion, the monk develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of mindfulness goes to fulfillment by development in the monk. The remaining three foundations of mindfulness should be elaborated as in the case of the first foundation of mindfulness. He becomes one who closely looks on with equanimity, the mind is concentrated. Whenever a monk becomes one who closely looks on with equanimity as the mind is concentrated. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of equanimity is aroused by the monk. On that occasion, the monk develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity. On that occasion, the enlightenment factor of equanimity goes to fulfillment by development in the monk. It is monks, when the four foundations of mindfulness are developed and cultivated in this way, that they fulfill the seven factors of enlightenment.
Okay, so let's chat about this for a little bit. So, having developed the four foundations of mindfulness, where the mind's been using breathing mindfulness meditation on a consistent long-term basis, and those four foundations are established, having awareness of bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. Now with that mindfulness, the mind can then be developing more and more the fulfillment of the seven factors of enlightenment. The seven factors of enlightenment are a tool to fine-tune the mind. Remember, these aren't to determine whether you are enlightened or you're not. It's to bring the mind into the middle. So the first factor of enlightenment is mindfulness and awareness of mind, which one would have developed as part of the breathing mindfulness meditation. Then the second, third, and fourth factors of enlightenment are the enlightenment factor of investigation, energy, and joy. And these are the three that you would like to practice whenever the mind is sluggish, dull, or lethargic. It's going to lift it up out of that condition into the middle. So investigation is where you're investigating the teachings of the Buddha. The energy is the vigor, the ambition, the motivation, the enthusiasm. And then the joy is the unconditioned gladness, where the mind is having unconditional happiness. And then when you see the mind is overactive or excited, you would like to calm it down with the enlightenment factors of tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. That tranquility is the calmness and peacefulness. The concentration is being able to focus on a single object. And then the equanimity is the calmness and composure, especially in difficult situations. So that's going to bring your mind to the middle. And now more and more, when your mind's residing in the middle, it'll just stay there all the time. You guys might remember my analogy with the piece of wood and the steel. As you grind that back and forth, it's going to bounce around for a while. But then over time, you're going to get this groove where the mind will just stay in that groove all the time. So whenever you're seeing the mind on either side, either sluggish, dull, or lethargic, or overactive and excited, you would like to invoke the appropriate enlightenment factors in order to bring the mind to the middle. It's your mindfulness that you're practicing all the time that's making you aware that the mind is sluggish, dull, and lethargic, and you need to lift that up by doing some study and investigation of the teachings, bring in that ambition, that enthusiasm, the willingness to do something, the initiative. That's the enlightenment factor of energy. And then you'll see the joy starting to spring up in the mind. Because when it's dull and lethargic, there's no joy there. And then when you see your mind's overactive and you bring in that tranquility, concentration, equanimity, the mind starts residing more and more in the middle. And then it's just going to stay there all the time eventually. So you need to be attentive to the mind in this way. Initially, when you're first getting started, you're just paying attention to the Eightfold Path and getting that really well developed. But then as you're starting to do that and you're noticing the mind coming into the jhanas, you're going to need to start developing the seven factors of enlightenment. Because up to that point, you would have already been developing your meditation, you would have been developing your mindfulness, and now it's time to start paying attention to these 7 factors of enlightenment, because you're going to need to start tweaking the mind. You've already let go of the big things, right? You're not lying or stealing or having sexual misconduct. You've let go of a lot of those big things. You're not doing as much harmful speech anymore. All of those big things have been taken care of. So now it's time to start fine-tuning the mind. And that's what the 7 factors of enlightenment are doing. Okay, so now this is what leads to the next part. So, Vibhav, if you'd like to read that.
Sure. 7 factors of enlightenment fulfill the wisdom and liberation. Fulfill true wisdom and liberation, sorry. How monks are the 7 factors of enlightenment developed and cultivated so that they fulfill true wisdom and liberation? Here, monks, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, which is based on seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of investigation, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of energy, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of joy, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of tranquility, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of concentration, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity, which is based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. It is, monks, when the 7 factors of enlightenment are developed and cultivated in this way that they fulfill true wisdom and liberation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vibhav. So here, the Buddha is explaining how by developing the 7 factors of enlightenment, this is what actually leads to enlightenment itself, because that's where you're going to need to fine-tune the mind. Again, you've already taken care of the big things with the Eightfold Path and some of the other teachings, but now you're going to need the 7 factors of enlightenment to go there and fine-tune things. So here, when he's talking about the enlightenment factor, okay, you guys just learned what the enlightenment factors are, and I've talked about this at other times as well. And it's in volume 1, chapter 3. That's where you'll find a detailed description of those. And he's saying it's based upon seclusion, meaning that you would like to get to the point where you're completely comfortable being alone. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they would go out into the forest for multiple weeks and months at a time. Now that might not be practical. And as a household practitioner, you need to be able to go to work and spend time with your family and things like this. But you would like to get to the point where you're comfortable going to the mall by yourself, going to the movies by yourself, taking yourself out to dinner and things like this. And if you haven't been doing those things, it's important to kind of work some of those things in, where if you have a family or even other situations where you typically have people around you, maybe you go to work, you often have people around you, you need to get more and more comfortable being alone so that you can sit with your own thoughts. So whether it's vacationing alone, whether it's going out to dinner or the movies alone and things like this, you're going to need to be able to be joyful in spending time alone. Because if you don't enjoy spending time with yourself, why would anyone ever enjoy spending time with you? So you would like to get to the point where you're completely comfortable being alone. And more, it's going to lead to freedom from strong feelings. That's what you're working to eliminate, is the causes and conditions that are leading to these strong feelings. Then that leading to the elimination, which is what the Buddha is talking about here, and then maturing and release. What he's talking about here is that some of these cravings, desires, attachments, they're pretty deeply held in the mind, and you need to accumulate the benefits of maturing and maturing and maturing and maturing and really working to wear that away. Some cravings, desires, attachments can be around for years before it will actually release from the mind. Sometimes you can actually notice the moment a specific craving is released from the mind. So you might actually notice that in some situations. And that's because by continuing to develop the mind with the breathing mindfulness meditations, paying attention to the 4 foundations of mindfulness, practicing the 7 factors of enlightenment, you're going to notice these cravings starting to leave the mind. And as that's occurring, that's where the Buddha is saying, okay, this is what leads to true wisdom, because now you see the wisdom in the teachings, your mind has been more fully cultivated, and then that's what leads to liberation. Liberation is freedom of the strong feelings. That's enlightenment itself, where the mind is now free. Because when the mind is got craving, desire, attachment, it's not free. It's bound up. It's just a matter of time before one of the cravings get triggered, and now your mind is all bound up. But by the time you get to this point where you're able to fine tune the mind, you'll be able to now see the mind moving closer and closer to wisdom and closer to liberation. So do you guys have any questions at any point of this discourse? This is a really long discourse to be able to show you how one thing leads to another to another. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. Oh, you have a question?
I have a question just on the first part.
Okay.
So it seems that it's broken down like how to develop the four factors of the four foundations of mindfulness on each of the first part of this.
Down here as well.
Sorry. Yeah, basically broken down each of the the ways teaching the meditation, and then down each part into saying this will what will develop each foundation of mindfulness. Is that but you said at some point that when you start that becomes natural to you. So are you still, if you want to develop one of these things, do we still like kind of focus on our meditation on these things that, okay, I want to develop one of these foundations and then we meditate that way, or is this normal course of meditation that we will develop it? Like, I mean, I'm trying to understand whether we should try to focus on these things at particular points.
Yeah, this is like background information. This is the wisdom to help you understand why is meditation so important. Why is it that you're meditating every day, and what is it that you're really accomplishing? So you don't have to pay attention to each one of these statements. All you need to do is just have wisdom and confidence to know that the Buddha structured his meditation in a specific way for a specific purpose. There's always a why behind everything that a Buddha teaches. And this is the why. Why is it that we're meditating? Oh, because it develops the four foundations of mindfulness. But why are the four foundations of mindfulness important? Oh, because it leads to the development of the 7 factors of enlightenment. Well, why are they important? Oh, it leads to this wisdom and this liberation of mind. So this is what you need to be able to just kind of look at it, learn it, independently verify it, see the logic in it, and then you just set it to the side and you just know, okay, as I'm starting to meditate, I need to over time accumulate the benefits of this to now be aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. And then as you're doing that, then that's going to lead into the development of the 7 factors of enlightenment. And then make sure you know what those are, and then you practice those in day-to-day life. So this is just kind of like a backstory to help you understand all of that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Marcy, you have your hand up.
Teacher David, it appears that the Buddha strategically layers the teachings so that you get more in depth. Is it in a situation? How would I want to explain this to you? I guess the best way to do it is to give an example. So I have spoken to you about my previous interactions with my neighbor with the dog, right? So, and how grateful I am that this is a good teaching moment. So the other day I was walking my dogs in from the mailbox, and her dog came loose and charged us. Ended up in a kerfuffle. My dog got loose. I fell to the ground, hurt my finger, hurt my knee. And I instantly was feeling all of these things. And I noticed that it was like a layering. Like I could feel the layering of the bodily sensations. Then I could feel the feelings of anger arise in me. And I even kind of blurted out, like, what the F? Like, you know what I mean? And once I gathered my animals and I came into the house, I just instantly said, wait a minute, Marcy, these are all of this discontentedness. You need to regain control of your mind. And it was almost like I was layering the teachings on top of the layering effects of what was happening. Is that common?
Yeah, you have the wisdom now to be able to remedy what it is. You can see very clearly, there was some contact through the eyes and the ears and the body and whatever else kind of contact that you had. Then it led to triggering a craving in the mind. Then there was the bodily sensations. Then it became a feeling. And now when you thought about it, you must have caught it off there perhaps, or I don't know if it affected the condition of your mind. how you felt over the next couple of minutes or hours, but you can start independently verifying each aspect of these teachings and see the truth in them. And that's part of the development to get to enlightenment, is you need to be able to see the true wisdom that the Buddha is sharing with you, because then you can step in and take action to transform it. Whereas if you didn't understand this was the sequence of events that was happening, you wouldn't be able to transform it. So now you have the wisdom to be able to do all of that, where in the past you might have gone inside and been angry and blaming the neighbor and cussing them and how bad they are, and they're causing you to be angry, where now you can look inward with wisdom, be introspective, and figure this out and how to take action to not allow this in the mind to occur again.
Yeah, and what ended up happening is once I got inside, I kind of applied to calm the mind. I took a couple of moments and did some breathing, and then I actually went over and had a conversation with the neighbor. And she said to me, she said, "Thank you so much for being so gracious about this. If it happened to me, I would have been full of, bullshit." And we now have this relationship, which is matured into something so wonderful, where now we are communicating when the dogs are going out, and we are going to try to work on socializing the dogs so they become social with each other, so they're aware of each other, so there's not so much of this reaction. But for me in the moment, it was like I was almost like going step by step through it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just I see how the Buddha layers things, and it was almost like the ways I was stepping was taking each layer at a time and applying it. Yep. That was my share. Yeah,
that's good. And that's what you would like to do, is now apply generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom in this situation. And that's what's going to produce the wholesome results. Where if you function through craving, anger, and ignorance, that's going to be the unwholesome results. So now you're seeing the wholesome results of practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom with your neighbor, that now you guys are going to be able to experience wholesome Dhamma. Okay, let me see. Don't see any other questions. So we're off to chapter 12. Pat was going to read this one. If you'd like to read this one, sir.
The suitable way for attaining Nibbana, Enlightenment, First Discourse. Monks, I will teach you the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. And what, monks, is the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana? Here, a monk sees the I as impermanent. He sees forms as impermanent. He sees eye consciousness as impermanent. He sees eye contact as impermanent. He sees as impermanent whatever feeling arises with eye contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. He sees the ear as impermanent. He sees sound as impermanent. He sees ear consciousness as impermanent. He sees ear contact as impermanent. He sees as impermanent whatever feeling arises with ear contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. He sees the nose as impermanent. He sees odors as impermanent. He sees nose consciousness as impermanent. He sees no contact as impermanent. He sees as impermanent whatever feeling arises with nose contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. He sees the tongue as impermanent. He sees flavors as impermanent. He sees tongue consciousness as impermanent. He sees tongue contact as impermanent. He sees as impermanent whatever feeling arises with tongue contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. He sees the body as impermanent. He sees physical objects as impermanent. He sees body consciousness as impermanent. He sees body contact as impermanent. He sees as impermanent whatever feeling arises with body contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. He sees the mind as impermanent. He sees mental objects as impermanent. He sees mind consciousness as impermanent. He sees mind contact as impermanent. He sees as impermanent whatever feeling arises with mind contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. This, monks, is the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So this is taking the universal truth of impermanence and combining it with the six sense bases. And then the Buddha is helping you to be able to see how all these things that you're experiencing are impermanent. Because as you guys know, the underlying problem is the mind's craving permanence. So it's important to be able to develop, in order to get to enlightenment, the understanding that the I is impermanent, the physical forms that it sees, or the forms that it sees, those are impermanent as well. And now when the mind becomes aware of that physical form, that's what's called I consciousness. When we say I consciousness, it means that the mind is now aware of what it's seeing through the eye. And now that's impermanent. And then there's this contact. That's what the I, the form, and the I consciousness, these three things coming together, we call that eye contact. That the I, the internal sense base, whatever it is, whether the eye, ear, nose, tongue, the body, or the mind, has come in contact with the external sense base, the forms, the sounds, the odors, the flavors, the physical objects, or the mental objects. And then the mind became aware of it. That's now called contact. And all of these things are impermanent. And then if there's any cravings in the mind, then there's going to be feelings that arise due to the eye contact, or ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind contact. There's going to be either a pleasant feeling, painful feeling, or neither painful nor pleasant. And you understand that that is impermanent. And why that's so important is that when you're sitting at the traffic light, listening to that music that you think is so great in the car next to you, and you're getting so excited about it, you need to be able to understand, this is an impermanent situation. Let's not let the mind get a conditioned pleasant feeling here. Because when you pull up to the next light and you hear that music that the mind doesn't like, you need to be able to understand, this is impermanent. Let's solve this. Let's allow the mind to let this go, not allow the mind to grab onto this. Let's not allow the mind to get frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Let's get rid of that craving. This person's enjoying their music. This is an impermanent situation, 3 to 5 minutes, and they're moving on in their day. So if you can start seeing all this contact that you're experiencing through the sense bases as impermanent, and it's not something that you need to agree with or disagree with, it's just contact. That if you hear a certain sound like music, it's not that you find it as agreeable or disagreeable, or you're favoring or opposing to it, or you're clinging to it, or you're repulsed by it, pushing it away. You're not interested in having the mind do either one of those things. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will have certain preferences. You might prefer to hear a certain type of music, but you're perfectly content hearing another kind of music too. There's still the happiness and joy in the mind. You're not repulsed by it. Whereas if there's a craving in the mind, you can only be happy when you hear this kind of music. And when you hear this kind of music, the mind's going to be angry and frustrated. But if you just see all these things as impermanent, and it's not needing to be agreeable or disagreeable, or favoring and opposing, or clinging or repulsed by these things, you can just see all these things as impermanent. And that's what's going to ultimately lead to the mind experiencing enlightenment, because you're not going to allow the mind to experience any conditioned feelings based on these impermanent situations. Okay, so any questions on this one here? Okay, looks like Vibhav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
David had a general question about when it says ear consciousness or eye consciousness. What does that really mean? I'm not clear on the meaning of consciousness for the six sense bases.
Yeah, what this is when the mind, when the consciousness becomes aware of what it's seeing through the eye. So there is the physical eye, which you can independently verify is impermanent. The forms that it sees in the world, you can see that, yes, independently verify those are impermanent. But now when the mind becomes aware of this physical form that it's seeing, that's what we call eye consciousness, that the mind is now aware of it. Because with the eye being the eye, the physical form being the physical form, there's no awareness of it yet because you haven't actually seen it. But once the eye looks at the physical form and the mind becomes aware of it, that's what we call eye consciousness. And these three things together, we refer to as eye contact, that you've now experienced contact through the eye.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now we'll move on to the next chapter, which is chapter 13. And I have some hands here. Looks like Marcy, you're the next one to read. Go ahead, ma'am.
Sure. Thank you, Teacher David.
And by the way, I'm sorry, Marcy, just to shorten this up a little bit, just in the interest of time, since we had that long discourse, there's a way for you to just kind of read through this, because this is a lot of the same repeating, where it's essentially what we just talked about, but with discontentedness. So maybe you could read it in that way, just to kind of shorten it up.
Absolutely. A simple way for attaining Nibbana, enlightenment, second disclosure. Monks, I will teach you the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana. Listen to and attend closely. I will speak. And what, monks, is the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana? Here, a monk sees eyes as discontentedness. He sees form as discontentedness. He sees eye consciousness as discontentedness. He sees eye contact as discontentedness. He sees as discontentedness whenever feelings arise with eye contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. And then it says he does it with the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body. He sees the mind as discontentedness. He sees mental objects as discontentedness. He sees mind consciousness as discontentedness. He sees mind contact as discontentedness. He sees as discontentedness whatever feelings arise with mind contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. This, monks, is the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana.
Okay, thank you, Marcy. So here, the mind needs to be able to understand that it's when you experience contact through the six sense bases, and there's a craving in the mind, that's going to arise discontentedness. So it's these doorways that you're experiencing contact through that is the condition that's leading to the triggering of the craving. And now with the craving in the mind, that's when the discontentedness is arising. And you need to be able to discern this, because this is very key. Because, for example, when I was getting rid of coffee and I went like 8 weeks without coffee, and I thought that, wow, look at this, I'm eliminated coffee. This is great that I got rid of this craving. But then when I walked down the street and I got a whiff of that odor of the coffee, and I was right in there in the coffee shop, my mind at that time didn't have enough discipline that I ordered the coffee. I started drinking the coffee and I threw it away. But later I started to reflect, like, what was it? Why did my mind become overpowered by this craving? I wasn't guarding that doorway. The contact of the odor came in through the nose, and now I need to guard that more closely. So I started making wiser decisions, that when I would see a coffee shop coming up, I would switch to the other side of the street and I'd allow the mind to get that whiff of the odor of the coffee. And then I did that for a few months, but then I didn't need to do it anymore because the mind had eliminated its craving. But during that period of time where the mind was sensitive, I needed to cross the street and I'd allow the mind to get the whiff of odor of the coffee. So this is why it's important to be able to discern, where is the discontentedness coming from? Obviously, it's a craving, desire, attachment. So I already knew that I had a craving, desire, attachment for coffee. But what was the doorway that the contact came through that pulled the mind and arose that craving in the mind? And when you can discern it down to the level of detail of a particular doorway, or maybe 2 or 3, now you can make different decisions that's going to help you to really fine tune the mind and really make wise decisions. It's going to lead to the elimination of that particular craving. And this is where you really refine the mind in a lot of detail, working with that central desire to get rid of it. So any questions here on this discourse? Okay, it looks like we have something coming in on YouTube. Yihang is asking, hello, Teacher David. After hearing this discourse, I wonder if an enlightened being watching a horror movie will not experience any thrill feelings. Is that correct? How would them enjoy horror movies? Yeah, it's true that an enlightened being watching a horror movie, you're not going to get any kind of a thrill or any kind of emotions like that. I can only speak from experience, and I'm not saying that I'm enlightened, but I'm not saying that I'm not enlightened. But when I watch a movie, I don't get any kind of feelings or emotions. And I know that that's what an artist that is putting together a movie is actually going for. They're trying to elicit feelings and emotions from the audience and putting together a particular movie. But what I tend to appreciate when I watch movies is I look at the cinematography, I look at the costumes. I look at the script and the actors and how well it's performed, the lighting and the graphics, the sound. I pay attention to those kinds of things, and it makes me really intrigued that people put so much time and effort into these things. And I'm intrigued by these things and the wisdom that it takes to put these things together. But I no longer experience any kind of emotions related to a movie, but I'm interested in the story and what's the director and the producers and the actors trying to communicate in their artwork. And I look at it as artwork as opposed to going there for any kind of thrill or amusement or anything like that. Chrissy is asking, Teacher David, when you asked what one should do when they experience discontentedness, were you asking for painful feelings or pleasant feelings? If I heard you correctly, one is to cut off thoughts and let go. So is one to do that with both pleasant and painful feelings? Yes, this is the conditioned feelings. Remember that the conditioned pleasant feelings are when you have contact through the sense bases. If you have a certain craving, you're going to get happy or excited or elated. So you look out at the sun and you see the sun with your eyes, and now you get excited. And now you form that conditioned feeling. But then when the sun goes away and it starts snowing or it starts raining or sleeting, someone, because they got excited with the sun, now they will get frustrated or irritated or annoyed, because that feeling of the pleasant feelings of happiness, it's only temporary because the mind formed this feeling based on the condition of the sun. So you would like to get to the point where you can enjoy the sun and you're like, wow, it's sunny outside, wonderful, we're going to go outside and play, and you can enjoy that, but without conditioned pleasant feelings. This is what the mind needs to learn how to do. So if you notice the bodily sensations associated with the conditioned pleasant feeling, which is usually tingling across the back of the shoulders, up the neck, and around the skull, you cut that off and let that go. Don't allow the mind to form that conditioned feeling. But you still enjoy it. It's like, oh, wow, this is really wonderful. It's sunny outside. But then when you see it's raining, it's like, all right, sweet. Well, it's raining. So, what else can we do? And you just maintain your peacefulness and your joy and your happiness because you didn't allow the mind to get that conditioned pleasant feeling. It's not going to get the painful one. So the real secret, even though there's no secret on the path to enlightenment, the real key to understanding how to get rid of those painful feelings is you need to see the pleasant ones just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. That if you allow the mind to get pleasant feelings, then it's only a matter of time before you get the painful ones. So if you get a new job, like say this new client of yours is going to pay you $5,000 to clean their house for 3 hours, and you get so excited about that $5,000. Well, then when they call you up 2 days before and they say, sorry, we've had a change of plans, we don't need you to clean our house, then you'll be sad and frustrated. So when that person calls you and says, hey, I'm going to give you $5,000 to clean my house for 3 hours, you just say, okay, sure. I'll be there at 9 a.m. and I'll be able to clean your house then. And then you don't cling to it. You don't hold on to it. You know that this is impermanent, that this may or may not even happen. And now when they call you and say, hey, sorry, we had a change of plans. Hey, no worries. Your mind never grabbed onto it, so you're not upset, you're not frustrated. You can just maintain your peacefulness and your joy. So you need to be able to see those conditioned pleasant feelings just as much a problem as the painful ones. And I could give you more examples of that, where the pleasant feelings lead to the painful ones. So there is no secret on the path to enlightenment. This is wisdom and knowledge that is being shared into the world. But that's the real key, is to be able to cut off and let go of any conditional pleasant feelings, so that you can get to the unconditioned happiness and the unconditioned joy. Okay, it looks like Marcy has her hand up. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. So the mind right now is struggling with personal existence view. And I have been, the mind has been considering shaving the head as one of the steps to help. But I also am having, difficulty, or the mind's having a difficulty of delineating, is this a craving? Is this a craving to push myself, to push the mind to release the fetter of personal existence view? Or is this a healthy dedication or effort that I'm putting towards eliminating personal existence view? Because I've been going through this process where I've got, the clippers are right there and I'm ready to go do it. But then I'm like, I get these feelings. I can feel the bodily sensations. So I cut it off and I put the clippers down. But I also understand that this is something that can help, perpetuate the mind into releasing that fetter.
Okay. Yeah, that's what you would like to do, is keep doing what you're doing. Keep walking over to the clippers with the intention to cut it off. And then if you notice the feelings coming up, then cut those off and let it go and put the clippers down. Do it when the mind is calm and you can see that it's not based in craving. So that's what you would like to do. It's just like if you were going to buy a brand new mobile phone and you went to the store and you noticed like this excitement coming up in the mind, you would like to walk away from the mobile phone store and go do something else. And now a week or two later, come back to the mobile phone store, check out that mobile phone. If you're noticing pleasant feelings arising, walk away. And now when you walk away, you might notice that the mind's irritated or frustrated or annoyed, and you keep cutting that off. And you might need to do that 3, 4, 5, 6 times to ensure that the mind is making a decision that is not based in craving. So that's the way that you do it, is you walk up towards something with the intention to do it. You're observing the mind and see what's happening, and then you walk away from it. And this is going to allow the craving to get triggered if there's a craving in there. And then you have to cut it off and cut it off and cut it off. And then you try another time to see at what point is the mind completely calm. And even if the mind's completely calm and you're noticing that on the very, like the 5th time you notice the mind's calm, don't cut off your hair. Walk away from that. Same thing with the phone. If you're going to buy a phone, walk away from it, even though it's calm in that situation, because you might not be getting the pleasant feelings. But now walk away from it and see if there's any painful ones that come in, or neither painful nor pleasant. And do this multiple times until you can see 2 or 3 times that the mind doesn't experience conditioned pleasant feelings. It's not getting any conditioned painful ones, or the neither painful nor pleasant. And this is what will give you the confidence that there is no craving there, and you're making a decision based in discernment or wise decision making.
Okay. Thank you, Teacher David. I really appreciate that.
Yep. It'll be free of craving in that situation. Okay. So now we'll move on to the next discourse. This one is the same thing except non-self. Maybe we don't even need to read this one. I will just basically teach it. I saw Keely, you would like to read next, so maybe you can read chapter 15. But this is exactly the same discourse that we have been reading, but instead of impermanence or discontentedness, the Buddha is saying non-self. So you need to be able to see the I as being non-self, that you need to be able to see the external sense base as non-self, that the awareness that it has is non-self, the contact is non-self, and then any feeling that is arising as a result of eye contact, that is non-self as well. And then he goes through all the 6 sense bases and explains it the same way. So this is where you would like to be sure that you don't see like, I am angry or I am frustrated. Well, there's no I here. Those feelings are not the self. So the Buddha is teaching you that here. So let me see if you guys have any questions on this one. Okay, it looks like Vibhav has a question here.
David, this was just a general question on non-self. And I think we've discussed it a little bit. I think the most difficult part of the non-self, like understanding non-self is for at least for me, is like I do not exist. So even when I'm doing the meditation on non-self, then it comes to that. I mean, it can go through the part where it says, okay, I'm not the body, it kind of makes sense. I'm not the mind, makes sense. There's no self, makes sense. But when it comes to that, I do not exist. And because there is a body and there is, it's visible to the eye, that part really is very hard to let go. Mm-hmm. I know you were talking to the gentleman when you're having that discussion on the self or non-self in the class in the temple, and you were saying that I do not exist. And somebody asked you, do you exist? But I think it was yesterday's class in the temple when somebody was asking you, I do not exist, and you say, yeah, I don't exist, but somebody is seeing you. It is very hard to let go of that concept of that you do not exist. So do you have any thoughts on how we can actually even get more understanding of the non-self, and even with seeing that, there is a body that exists, but it's not you?
Yeah, you need to keep doing these things. That's why it is challenging, because the mind's still holding on. It doesn't want to let go. So it's a matter of understanding that there is a body, there is a mind, but this isn't who you are. So when we say I do not exist, that's not to say that there is no being in existence. It means that this I that the mind keeps holding on to, that doesn't exist. And the mind needs to get to a point where it's willing to let that go. So continue to do all those things in volume 1, chapter 16, including the meditation, and it'll keep maturing and maturing and maturing and release until eventually it'll release from the mind.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, not seeing any other questions. So let's go to chapter 15, and let's see. Keely was planning to read this one. Let me just see what this one is. I think it's basically just combining what we've already been reading. Yeah, this is just combining the things that we've already read. And then the Buddha is basically just giving us this same thing that he usually teaches, which is once you've gotten to enlightenment, that you've destroyed birth, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done had to be done. There's no more for this state of existence. So he's basically just combining all the things that we just studied. So let me go to chapter 16, and this one, Keely, would be a good one for you to start off with.
Okay, thank you, Teacher David. Dispelling the contact, monks, consciousness comes to be based on two things. And how, monks, does consciousness come to be based on two things? Consciousness is based on the I and forms. There arises I consciousness. The I is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. Forms are impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. Thus, these two things are moving and fluctuating, impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. I consciousness is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. The cause of and condition for the arising of I consciousness is also impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. When monks, I consciousness has arisen based on a condition that is impermanent. How could it be permanent? The meeting, the encounter, the combining of these three things is called eye contact. Eye contact too is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. The cause and condition for the arising of eye contact is also impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. When monks, eye contact has arisen based on a condition that is impermanent. How could it be permanent? Contacted monks. When feels contact, one craves. Contacted, one receives. Thus, these things too are moving and fluctuating, impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. Similar discourses were recited in the case of ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. In dependence on the ear and sounds, there arises ear consciousness. In dependence on the nose and odors, there arises nose consciousness. In dependence on the tongue and flavors, there arises tongue consciousness. In dependence on the body and physical objects, there arises body consciousness. In dependence on the mind and mental objects, there arises mind consciousness. The ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind are impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. Mental objects are impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. Thus, these two things are moving and fluctuating, impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. Mind consciousness is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. The cause and condition for the arising of mind consciousness is also impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. When monks, mind consciousness has arisen based on a condition that is impermanent. How could it be permanent? The meeting, the encounter, the combining of these three things is called mind contact. Mind contact too is impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. The cause and condition for the arising of mind contact is also impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. When monks' mind contact has arisen based on a condition that is impermanent, how could it be permanent? Contacted monks, one feels, contacted one craves, contacted one perceives. Thus these things are two, moving and fluctuating, impermanent, changing, becoming otherwise. It is in such a way, monks, that consciousness comes to be based on two things. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keely. So what helps you to understand here and how you can use a discourse like this is the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that all these things are impermanent. When we study the universal truth of impermanence, we just say, hey, everything's impermanent. Here's a couple of ways to verify that. And then you're off to learning the next universal truth. But here you're getting into the level of detail of understanding each individual aspect of this body being impermanent, that the eye is impermanent, the form that the eye sees, the awareness of that, the contact of that, all these things are changing and becoming otherwise. That all this stuff is impermanent. And where that helps you is that where you see your mind longing, yearning for something, trying to get pleasant feelings out of this thing, you need to remind yourself, whether it's the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, or the mind, that, hey, this is impermanent. I'm not going to get permanent satisfaction by chasing after this thing. It's just going to keep the problem going on and on and on. And that can make it easier for you to restrain the mind and pull it back, that you see the problem in the mind chasing after these things and welcoming in those conditioned pleasant feelings. Because as long as you keep allowing that to occur, then the mind's going to just stay stuck in that continuous cycle of doing that over and over. So that's how you use a discourse like this, is that you go ahead and independently verify each individual thing that the Buddha is saying, that all these things are impermanent, but then you use it in day-to-day life, that when you see your mind longing and yearning, you just need to remind yourself, hey, that is impermanent. Let me restrain the mind and pull it back. I'm not going to get permanent satisfaction out of that. And that's like using the example that Marcy was using with the hair and the clippers. That's what you're doing, is you're walking right up to the edge where the mind's starting to have this contact. And now you see those feelings coming up and you cut that off and let it go. And then you walk away and you remember this is impermanent. And you keep doing that until the craving is fully extinguished out of the mind. And you can be doing this with different things. This is where training your mind becomes a full-time job. You know, it really does become a full-time job, and you like to really be attentive to the mind, but you can do these kinds of things here and there. It's not like you have to, dedicate, 10 hours a day to it, because you'll be going through your day and everything will be just fine. You'll feel just fine. But in that situation where you're noticing some discontentedness, you need to be able to apply the teachings in that situation. So you might go an hour or 2 or 3 without any discontentedness. But then when you notice the discontentedness, that's where you need to take action to cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation. Okay, so let me see what questions you guys have here. It looks like Chrissy has a question. Go ahead, ma'am. You switched over to Zoom, it looks like. There you go.
Okay, so I'm trying to lower my hand too. My computer's like rebooting. Sorry about that. I'm wondering why one would shave their head to eliminate personal existence view.
Sure. What personal existence view is where the mind is clinging to the self-image or the self-identity in the mind. So the mind's clinging to the body, and now the mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. This is why, like, if you spill spaghetti sauce on your clothing when you're in a social situation, you might get embarrassed, because the mind is clinging to the body, thinking that this is who you are, and the mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. So if you're being perceived as clean and neat and orderly, the mind is happy. But when you're being perceived by others, perhaps with spaghetti sauce all over your shirt, now you get painful feelings from that. Whereas if you go out into the world without jewelry, without makeup, having shaved your head, wearing simple clothes, or not allowing the mind to actually select the clothes, you just pick off the top of your stack, like you've heard me talk about before, this gradually trains the mind to not want or crave others to perceive you in a certain way, that you don't see this body as being who you are, and that you need to beautify the body, and you can't feel comfortable until you go outside. I don't know if you've had this experience, maybe younger in life, where you paid attention to every little hair before you go outside. Maybe you put on a set of clothes, you looked in the mirror, you didn't quite look the way you wanted to look, and now you change to another set of clothes. This is the mind's personal existence view, and you can get past that where you can just be comfortable no matter how you look. And it doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily keep your hair shaved for the rest of your life. You just might decide to go 6 months, a year, 2 years, where you're going out into the world with a shaved head. And you don't have to shave your hair in order to get to enlightenment, but it does really accelerate the elimination of personal existence view. That's one of the biggest things. Shaving your hair, getting rid of jewelry and makeup and things like this, any adornments or colognes or perfumes, in wearing simple clothes or picking off the top of your stack. These are the 3 things that are going to have the most impact to getting rid of personal existence view, so that the mind doesn't cling to this body as who you are.
Can I ask more questions about that?
Sure, you can ask as many as you like.
Okay. So the mind's had a bit of a struggle with the gray hair that's coming in. And I have one specific gray hair right here that sticks straight up. It's really rude. And my daughter, when she's talking to me sometimes, like for a bit, I thought there was something wrong with her eyes because she wouldn't look at me. She would like cross her eyes and look up here, and she was looking at that one gray hair that sticks up. And so now we call it my unicorn. But a lot of women around, like where I'm from, they color their hair and they put like chemicals in it to like color it and do stuff. So to try to eliminate the craving to look a certain way, I'm trying to just go into that and not color my hair or, spend excessive time on it. Like I just, I'll put it in a bun or a ponytail, minimally wash it or spend much energy or time on it. So if you're shaving your head, is it the craving to want to have no hair or the craving for your hair if one shaves their head?
Yeah, there doesn't have to be a craving in order to shave your hair. When you're shaving your hair, what you're doing is you're training the mind to not associate this body with who you are. But it sounds like what Marcy's experiencing is a craving to shave her hair. So this is where the mind is different and unique with each individual person. Like for some people, they don't have a craving to shave their hair. They can shave their hair and be just fine. But it sounds like in Marcy's case, she's getting excited about the idea of letting go of personal existence view, and she's getting excited when she's potentially getting ready to shave her hair. So in your situation, you might not experience that. If you were interested in shaving your hair, you might just be like, yeah, let me just go shave the hair and let's get it off. Or you might decide to let your hair turn gray and you'd be completely fine with that. And that's part of eliminating personal existence view too, is just letting it turn gray. If you're noticing that you're struggling with that grayness and now you allow it to go gray, this is essentially having a similar effect as shaving it off, that the mind doesn't want it to be gray. The mind wants it to be colored. And now you're training your mind to let go of that craving and just maintain its peace and its joy regardless of how the hair looks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay, it looks like Marcy, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Teacher David. So I have multiple tattoos covering my body, and I swim about 2 to 3 times a week at the Y. And today I had a conversation with a woman who was hesitant to have a conversation with me, and she basically articulated that my tattoos made her feel as though I was unapproachable. So for someone in a situation where I'm at, where I'm trying to eliminate personal existence view, I have these tattoos, right? So when I got them, my mind was muddled, and I did it for certain attention-seeking things, to get people to either stay away from me or attract people of the same kind of mindset, where that's where I'm not now. How would you guide someone to process or not allow the markings on their body affect the mind? You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm making my question clear.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand. So in this situation, if somebody is vocalizing to you like, hey, I feel like with your tattoos, you're unapproachable, at that point, it can trigger your personal existence view where you feel offended or upset or frustrated because it's triggering your craving, wanting to be perceived a certain way. So in this situation, you need to just reside peaceful and joyful. And if you can smile and say, yeah, you can talk to me, no problem. Like, what would you like to talk about? You can just play it off like that. But remember, you're always practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. If you're noticing that you're angry and you're frustrated and that's starting to build up in the mind, that's not the proper time to talk. So that's why, like, in these certain situations, you can't give just one permanent answer, because in that situation, if your mind is starting to become irritated or frustrated, it's not the proper time to talk, and you'd like to step away from the conversation, let the mind calm down. And maybe the next time you go there and you see this person, then you smile at her, say, hello, how are you? And you start to kind of make some inroads there. But you would like to get to the point where you disassociate with this body, including its tattoos, as being who you are. Even though these were decisions that you made in the past for any number of reasons, okay, the tattoos are there. They're not truly permanent. As you know, they fade, they stretch, they get discolored, all of these kinds of things, but they're there, and they're going to be there, to some degree, most likely into the end of this life. And now you just accept, like, okay, this is what the body is, and I'm not going to form any feelings or emotions based on it.
Yeah, I noticed that the mind, the feelings that were coming up was not agitation, just more kind of like a sadness, because I had lived a life so long in seclusion and not wanting to have communication with people. And now the mind is at a point where it's interested in having, relationships and having conversations with other humans. But the tattoos or these decisions that I had made in the past had now created a barrier. So that's where I was getting that feeling. And I basically asked the woman, don't judge a book by the cover, kind of a thing, But yeah, so that's where the mind was. But I appreciate the guidance, Teacher David. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is where you're practicing inside your life practice, right? Because you can't determine what any one particular person is going to say or do when you're around, because you don't know what's going on in their mind. So when these kinds of events happen, whether it's with your dog or whether it's with you swimming and all these kinds of things, each kinds of situation that you're in, this is an opportunity for you to practice. And now you observe, like, whoa, the mind was feeling a little bit of sadness there. That means there's still some personal existence view there. That means there's still some sensual desire there. And these are things that you would like to be attentive to. And now in those situations, now you practice some more and you do these things again, where what we would typically do without an understanding of these teachings is we're like, maybe, I'm never going to the Y again. I'm never going swimming, or I'm going to wear a shirt every time I swim now so I can avoid having to have that conversation. That's what the mind's going to typically want to do. But you would like to do just the opposite, that if you know these teachings and you know that that doesn't solve the problem, avoiding the swimming, avoiding that woman, putting on a shirt, none of that solves the problem. So in this situation, now that you've seen this situation occur, you would like to expose the mind to this each individual time. And each time you do it, you'll get rid of more and more of that craving, wear that away, and you'll get to the point where people can say things about this body and there won't be any sadness or any other discontent feelings. And that's how you gradually work away and you practice the teachings on a day-to-day basis, and using these experiences to help you get rid of your cravings. Okay. All right, I don't see any other questions, so we'll go on to the next chapter, which is chapter 17. Let's see, is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, it looks like, I don't think, has Marcy read yet? Have you read yet, Marcy? Oh yeah, you read already. Let's go to Vibhav, so we'll start over. So we'll go with Vibhav and then with Marcy.
Thank you. Direct development of the Noble Eightfold Path. Monks, when one knows and sees the I as it actually is, when one knows and sees forms as they actually are, when one knows and sees I consciousness as it actually is, when one knows and sees I contacts as it actually is, when one knows and sees as it actually is, the feeling felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, that arises with eye contact as condition, then one is not inflamed by craving for the eye, for forms, for eye consciousness, for eye contact, so the feeling felt as pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, that arises with eye contact as condition. When one resides uninflamed by craving, unfettered, unobsessed, reflecting on danger, then the five aggregates affected by clinging are diminished for one in the future, and one's craving, which brings renewal of existence, is accompanied by excitement and desire, and excitement in this or that are abandoned. One's bodily and mental troubles are abandoned, one's bodily and mental torments are abandoned, one's bodily and mental fevers are abandoned, and one experiences bodily and mental peacefulness. The view of a person such as this is right view. His intention is right intention, his effort is right effort, his mindfulness is right mindfulness, his concentration is right concentration. But his bodily action, his verbal speech, and his livelihood have already been well purified earlier. Thus, this Noble Eightfold Path comes to fulfillment in him by development. When he develops this Noble Eightfold Path, the four foundations of mindfulness also come to fulfillment in him by development: body, feelings, mind, mental objects. The four kinds of striving also come to fulfillment in him by development, right effort. The four bases for spatial power also come to fulfillment in him by development, also known as mental power, initiative, energy, mind, investigation. The five sense bases also come to fulfillment in him by development: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body. The five powers also come to fulfillment in him by development: confidence, energy, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom. The seven factors of enlightenment also come to fulfillment in him by development: mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, equanimity. These two things, serenity and insight, occur in him mind evenly together. He fully understands by direct knowledge, experience, those things that should be fully understood by direct knowledge, experience. He abandons by direct knowledge of experience those things that should be abandoned by direct knowledge. He develops by direct knowledge those things that should be developed by direct knowledge. He realizes by direct knowledge those things that should be realized by direct knowledge. All the below were restated as above. When one knows and sees the ear that as it actually is, when one knows and sees the nose as it actually is, when one knows and sees the tongue as it actually is, when one knows and sees the body as it actually is, when one knows and sees the mind as it actually is. These are the things that should be realized by direct knowledge, experience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vibhav. So here the Buddha is actually describing what we were just talking about earlier, that when you know the impermanent nature of this contact through the six sense spaces, and that these feelings are impermanent as well, then this leads to the elimination of craving, desire, attachment. This is what we were talking about, that it leads to this elimination of craving, because you understand that you see your mind longing and yearning, and you're like, why am I longing and yearning for that impermanent thing? I'm not going to get permanent pleasure from it, so why even go in that direction? It's kind of like the road is forking. And it's like I can go down this path of continuing to crave and cling on to these impermanent things, which ultimately end me up in painful feelings, or I can go down this path where I restrain my mind and I don't allow the mind to crave and long and yearn, and I get to the permanent peace and the permanent joy and the permanent happiness. So that's what the Buddha is describing here. And then he kind of walks you through his teachings of other things that are actually plugging in and showing you how all of this is working together. So I'm not going to go through every last little piece of this. If you guys have questions about it, you're more than welcome to ask questions. So it looks like, Vibhav, you have your hand up for questions.
No, actually, I wanted to raise my hand down after reading, sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, Chrissy, do you have a question?
Okay. You can hear me?
Yep, sure can.
Okay, so I just want to verify that I'm hearing this right. So if the mind is craving for pleasant feelings, like I'm going to do a scenario because it's easier for me sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
The mind will crave for another puppy or dog. Even this morning, I saw that there's a doodle in the shelter, and I'm like, oh, I want to go get that doodle. But I know I have enough on my plate already, more than enough. But the mind is craving that pleasant feeling of the feeling that my already dog brings me. So one is to cut that off and just let it go. Redirect the mind, or like go play with the puppy you already have. What am I hearing? Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, that's all good solutions. And if you have like a notification, or if you're checking the shelter regularly, I would encourage you to eliminate that from your phone or your computer or whatever it is, because that's just going to, spur that craving. So if you notice that craving come up, yeah, go redirect the mind. Go play with the dog you already have. That's a perfect way to redirect the mind, and then just let go of this craving that is coming up in the mind.
And why does that craving come in the mind when I already have a dog?
It's the mind's it's the mind's ignorance or unknowing of true reality. That's what's leading to the craving. That the mind thinks and it believes that, gosh, if I just go get this dog, it's going to make everything better in my life. Let me go down to that shelter and just make everything better. And it doesn't realize, through its lack of wisdom, that these conditioned pleasant feelings are just going to end you up in the painful ones. If you remember when you got that first dog that you had, you felt great for a little while, and then, man, you were so angry with it. You were trying to get rid of it, and you didn't like it, and you were trying to send it back, and all those kinds of things. And now you've gotten to the point where it's like you've kind of accepted it, and you kind of like it, and now you're attached to him. But you got to remind yourself of what the mind's doing because of its lack of wisdom, that ignorance or unknowing of true reality. It's going to keep craving and keep thinking that something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So you got to rise enough wisdom to realize that these external things aren't going to provide any lasting satisfaction.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions on YouTube or Facebook. So let's go to the next one. And I think Marcy was going to volunteer for this one.
Thank you, Teacher David. No coming or going, no passing away or arising. And on that perfectly enlightened one was instructing, urging, rousing, and encouraging the monks with discussion of the teachings concerned with liberation. The monks, receptive, attentive, focusing their entire awareness, lending ear, listen to the teachings. Then, on realizing the significance of that, the perfectly enlightened one on that occasion exclaimed, "One who is dependent has wavering. One who is independent has no wavering. There being no wavering, there is calm. There being calm, there is no yearning. There being no yearning, there is no coming or going. There being no coming or going, there is no passing away or arising. There being no passing away or arising, there is neither a here nor there, nor a between the two. This, just this, is the end of stress."
Okay. So as you guys have heard me share before, by the way, thank you, Marcy. You've heard me share how the Buddha is a master at showing this cause and effect, or this action and result. He's showing you how one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. So what he means here when he says, when one who is dependent has wavering, what he's saying is that when you have craving, desire, attachment, your mind's going to waver. It's not going to make a decision and stick with it. This is why, like, if you have kids and you make a decision to do something and do something with them or not do something with them, when they start whining or complaining or, oh, please, mom, dad, and this is where you kind of waver, and now you change your decision because your mind is attached to them. You're dependent on them. And now when they start whining, complaining perhaps, maybe your mind starts to experience painful feelings, and now your mind wavers. And what the Buddha is saying is when you're independent, there's no wavering, meaning when you're not attached to your children, you see them whine and complain. It's like, hey, you know that this is actually the best thing for them, because the whining and complaining is coming from the craving. And because of that craving, desire, attachment in their mind, they're starting to have unskillful conduct, and they're trying to get you to twist to the point where you'll change your decision. But when you can get free of that attachment, then there's no wavering in your decisions. And it's not just with this. It's like, say you break up with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you realize at some point in time, you're like, this is the best thing for me to do. Let me break up. And now you break up, and now after 2, 3, 4, 5 days, you start feeling lonely, you start feeling bored, you start thinking about them, you start missing them, and then you're like, let me go back to them. And now you decide to go back to them. Because your mind is attached to them, it's dependent on them, your mind wavers. You don't stick with that wise decision, perhaps. But when your mind is unattached, there's no wavering. Okay? So now when there's no wavering, when your mind's unattached, and there's no wavering with that ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, there's calm. When you're dependent and your mind's wavering back and forth, there's no calm. Your mind is obsessively churning. But when you don't have this attachment and there's no wavering, then the mind's calm and peaceful, right? And now when there's calm and peacefulness, there's no yearning, because it's the longing, the yearning, it's the craving that is causing the mind to be uncalm. But when the mind's calm, you can see that there's no yearning, there's no longing, yearning in the mind. When there's no longing or yearning in the mind, there's no coming and going. What coming and going is like, we can use this example with a boyfriend or girlfriend, that you might come and go in and out of the relationship with this person because your mind is yearning. But when you have no yearning, there's no coming and going in and out of this relationship. Or you might think about this physically, of like, coming and going. Like, if you ever been somewhere and you're just like, gosh, I just want to go somewhere. I just want to go outside. There's this longing, yearning. Or you just feel like you want to go on a trip. There's just this longing, yearning to go on holiday or go on vacation. That's the yearning that leads to the coming and going, where you can't be content where you're at in the present moment. Because there's yearning, you can't be content in the present moment. So there's coming and going, where you think the next new shiny object, that next trip, that coming and going is going to lead to some satisfaction. But when there is no yearning, then there's no coming and going. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will travel, but it won't be based in craving, desire, attachment. It won't be based in yearning, right? So now when there's no coming and going, there's no passing away or arising of conditioned feelings. That now you can be content in the present moment. That if you're longing, yearning to be somewhere that you're not, meaning the grass is greener on the other side, that means that there's going to be this arising and fading away of conditioned feelings. But when there's no coming and going, that's because there's no yearning, there's no craving, desire, attachment. So there's not going to be this arising, changing, and fading away of strong feelings. There being no arising and changing of conditioned feelings, there's neither here nor there, or between the two, that you're just content in the present moment. You can just sit there and just be content in the present moment, just joyful. This is the end of stress. That's what the Buddha is explaining to you. So you need to get to the point where you eliminate this dependency, you eliminate these cravings, desires, attachments, get to the point where you're independent and your mind no longer wavers, that you can think about something, you think about it, and you think about it, and now you make a decision because you know it's a wise decision, and you just go forward with that decision, right? And now when there's no wavering, then the mind can be calm because you know, hey, I've made a really good decision here. There's no craving in this decision. It's a wise decision, and now your mind can be calm. And because the mind's calm, there's no yearning. And when there's no yearning, you can be peaceful and content in the present moment. When you're peaceful and content in the present moment where you're at, there's no arising or changing or fading away of these discontent feelings. And now you're completely content and the mind is stress-free and the mind's not experiencing discontentedness. So do you guys have questions on this chapter? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So now let's go to the next one. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, Keely, I saw your hand go up. Go ahead, ma'am.
There is no you there. Then, Bahaya, when for you there will be only the seen in reference to the seen, only the heard in reference to the heard, only the sensed in reference to the sensed, only the recognized in reference to the recognized, then Bahaya, there is no you in connection with that. When there is no you in connection with that, there is no you there. When there is no you there, you are neither here nor there, nor between the two. This, just this, is the end of stress. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keely. So here, this is the Buddha helping you to understand that there is no self, there's no you there, but he's also teaching you not to insert your own perceptions into any particular situation. That there's only the seen in reference to the seen, only the heard in reference to the heard, only the sensed in reference to the sense. So let's just say you're in a business meeting and somebody walks in and they're in the beautiful clothing, their hair looks perfect, they're wearing jewelry or makeup or cologne or perfume or whatever it is, and they just walk in. All it is the scene in reference to the scene. You just saw somebody walk in. That's it. But what the mind might want to do is look at that person and be like, look at him trying to look so handsome, or look at her trying to look so beautiful. That's you putting the you in there. You're putting your perceptions into the situation, and you're trying to read whatever's going on in your mind is coming from the other person, when in reality, there's really no you there. Don't put your own story into it. Don't put your own perceptions into it. It's just somebody walked into the room. That's it. And now the more you can do that, you'll eliminate your clinging to your perceptions, and you'll eliminate your clinging to this being as a actual being, that you don't have to cling to the five aggregates. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that there is no you there. Don't add your own perceptions into a situation, because it's going to cloud your ability to see true reality. You would like to be able to ask questions and be able to see true reality rather than insert your own perceptions, because that would be clinging to your perceptions. What a perception is your views and opinions that may or may not even be true. And that's not what you're interested in doing in your day-to-day life, whether it's at work or in your personal life or whatever it is, whatever is in the situation that you're encountering, it's just whatever you see. If you didn't see it, if you didn't hear it, if you didn't see it and sense it with all your senses, then it didn't happen. And you don't know that it happened or not. So that's where you need to ask questions, whether you're in a personal life or professional life. So any questions here? And by the way, this last part, the Buddha is saying this is the end of stress, because it's part of what you need to do to get rid of the elimination of discontent. And this is not cling to your perceptions and not cling to the five aggregates as this body or any of these other aggregates as who you are as a person. Okay, so there's no questions there. So we got this last one here, chapter 20. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, it looks like Chrissy is raising her physical hand. I happen to see it. I don't always see those because it depends on how many people are in there. I saw Keely, you raised your hand too, but we'll go ahead and let Chrissy raise her or read. I don't always see a physical hand, but I did that time.
Sorry, I don't have a mouse, so it's hard to click the buttons sometimes. Also, could you show me, or could you explain how to make the words bigger?
I don't know how to do it on your side, but there should be a way to zoom in within Zoom.
Well, I think I just figured it out. Okay.
Okay.
Merely the scene. Although, venerable sir, I am old, aged, burdened with years, advanced in life, come to the last stage, let the perfectly enlightened one teach me the teachings in brief. Let the fortunate one teach me the teachings in brief. Perhaps I may understand the meaning of the perfectly enlightened one's statement. Perhaps I may become an heir to the perfectly enlightened one's statement. What do you think, I'm sorry.
You can just say student.
Student. Do you have any craving, desire, or attachment for those forms recognizable by the eye that you have not seen? and never seen, never saw before, that you do not see and would not think might be seen? No, Venerable Sir. Do you not have any craving, desire, or attachment for those sounds recognizable by the ear, for those odors recognizable by the nose, for those flavors recognizable by the tongue, for those physical objects recognizable by the body, for those mental objects recognizable by the mind, that you do not, or that you have not recognized and never recognized before, that you do not recognize and would not think might be recognized? No, Venerable Sir. Here, student, regarding things seen, heard, sensed, and recognized by you, in the seen there will be merely the seen. In the heard there will be merely the heard. In the sensed there will be merely the sensed. In the recognized there will be merely the recognized. When, student, regarding things seen, heard, sensed, and recognized by you, in the seen there will be merely the seen. In the heard there will be merely the heard. In the sensed there will be merely the sensed. In the recognized there will be merely the recognized. Then, student, you will not be by that. When, student, you are not by that, then you will not be therein. When, student, you are not therein, then you will not be neither here nor beyond nor in between the two. This itself is the end of discontentedness. I understand in detail, Venerable Sir, the meaning of what was stated by the perfectly enlightened one in brief. Having seen a form with mindfulness muddled, attending to the pleasing sign, one experiences it with an obsessed mind. It remains tightly holding to it. Many feelings flourish within, originating from the visible form, craving and annoyance as well, by which one's mind becomes disturbed. For one who accumulates discontentedness, thus, nibbana, enlightenment, is said to be far away. All of the following, same as above. Having heard a sound with mindfulness muddled, having smelt an odor with mindfulness muddled, having tasted a flavor with mindfulness muddled, having touched a physical object with mindfulness muddled, having recognized a mental object with mindfulness muddled. For one who accumulates discontentedness, thus nibbana, enlightenment, is said to be far away. When firmly mindful, one sees a form. When one is not inflamed by craving for forms, one experiences it with an unaffected mind and does not remain holding it tightly. One fares mindfully in such a way that even as one sees the form and while one undergoes a feeling, discontentedness is exhausted, not built up. For one, dismantling discontentedness, thus, nibbana, enlightenment, is said to be close by. All of the following, same as above. When firmly mindful, one hears a sound. One is not inflamed by craving or sound. When firmly mindful, one smells an odor. One is not inflamed by craving for odors. When firmly mindful, one tastes a flavor. One is not inflamed by cravings for flavors. When firmly mindful, one touches a physical object. One is not inflamed by cravings for physical objects. When firmly mindful and recognizes a mental object, one is not inflamed by craving for mental objects. For one, diminishing discontentedness, thus, nibbana, enlightenment, is said to be close by. It is in such a way, Venerable Sir, that I understand in detail the meaning of what was stated by the perfectly enlightened one in brief. Good, student. It is good that you understand in detail the meaning of what was stated by me in brief. The Buddha here repeats the prior phrase, verses in full. It is in such a way, student, that the meaning of what was stated by me in brief should be understood in detail. Then the venerable student departed, dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, dedicated, and determined, and the venerable student became one of the arahants.
Okay, thank you, Chrissy. So here, the Buddha is just going through and essentially saying and helping you to be able to see, to not crave and desire and long and yearn through these sense spaces. This is something that's taught all throughout his teachings. And he's going to teach it different ways at different times. He's kind of coming at it from different angles and to be able to help you to be able to see that. And he's going through some different language here that can sometimes be a bit challenging to decipher. But essentially what he's getting to is the elimination of craving, which that is the dismantling of discontentedness. And what he's saying is that if your mindfulness is muddled and you experience these things with an obsessed mind, then you're not dismantling discontentedness. Instead, you're accumulating it, and you're far away from enlightenment because your mindfulness is muddled, meaning it's unclear, it's not well established, and your mind is now obsessed and it's craving and longing and yearning, and you're holding on to these objects tightly. But then he talks about, okay, when your mind is developed this mindfulness well, and you're working to be unaffected, where you're not inflamed by craving, and your mind isn't holding on tightly, then this person is working to exhaust discontentedness. They're not building it up. They're dismantling discontentedness. And this person is close to enlightenment, is what he's saying, is that if you're constantly eliminating discontentedness, cutting off and letting go at the bodily sensations, then you're involved in dismantling of discontentedness and you're close by to enlightenment. Okay? And then he goes through all the sense bases and explains that. This individual who's explaining it to, Mahalankinputta, this individual listened to this discourse, and of course he had already been training long before that, but when he left and went away, this is where he then attained enlightenment, is what this is saying. So we know that Mahalankinputta attained enlightenment during the lifetime of the Buddha. And it was through this discourse that was the final wisdom that really helped him to be able to make his way to the complete elimination of discontentedness. Any questions on this particular chapter? Okay, it looks like Mayuli has something here. The more I am aware of the mind, the more I realize the mind is polluted with thoughts, mainly reflecting on the teachings and questioning why the mind is so stubborn. Lately, this mind has been thinking about the 5 dangers that the Buddha mentioned. Perhaps this mind has fear or craving that the impermanence might prevent the mind from enlightenment. No, I don't think so, Mayuli, or maybe that is what your mind is doing. But when I say no, I don't think so, you will be able to get to enlightenment. You're making your way there. There's no reason why you wouldn't be. But yes, the mind is very stubborn with many of these cravings. I can describe cravings that took me many years to let go of. And you think that it's never going to be gone until it is, right? You just keep working at it, working at it, working at it. That's where your confidence comes in, that if you get rid of that doubt that you've seen a certain amount of progress in your practice and you know that you're headed in the right direction, you just got to stay diligent and dedicated for a consistent long-term period, where sometimes it feels like you're making baby steps or you're making no steps at all. But in reality, if you just keep on going, keep on practicing, keep on applying all the factors of the Eightfold Path, you're making your way forward. You need to just understand that some of these cravings are very stubborn, and it's going to take a long time to get rid of them. Okay. See, I don't see any questions anywhere else. So what I'll do is just end today by thanking all of you guys for asking questions, all of you guys for reading. Thank you for being involved in the class. And I'll remind you that next week we're going to be in chapters 21 through 31. Because there's 31 chapters in this book, we're going to actually be ending this book. It was just a really short book, just 31 chapters. So if you're reading ahead of time or you're reading after class, you can read from chapters 21 to 31. And remember, you've got the words of the Buddha and you've got words from me in there as well. So if you're reading the books, you're going to get a lot more benefit from the time that you spend studying. And if you haven't had an opportunity to read, still come to class. You're still going to benefit from the time in class. But if you can make your way into the books, either during the week or after the class, that's going to produce the most benefits. So if you guys would like to attend tomorrow's group learning program, we're going to be in chapter 1 of this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. We restarted this program a few weeks ago, so we're starting from chapter 1 now, and we're going to go chapter by chapter in the program. So you guys are always welcome. That particular chapter is titled Universal Teachings, Love, No Harm, and Good Morals. And this is going to help you to be able to see the connections between all these various traditions. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be doing loving kindness meditation together. That's the second part of our 4-part series where we're doing loving kindness and helping students to build up their loving kindness meditation and then opening up to any and all questions that you'd like to ask. So thank you guys again for joining, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Have a lovely rest of your day. Sawadee-ka. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.